and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, 10 TIBCO BusinessWorks Monitoring Tips in 30 Minutes. My name is Gia Mangino, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. Our presenters today are Ted Wilson, SL COO, and Glenn Edivan, SL Senior Pre-Sales Engineer. COO, Ted is responsible for many of SL's internal operations, including sales, marketing, services, and support. Ted has more than 20 years' experience in high-tech solution sales and consulting to Fortune 500 and global 1,000 clients. Glenn is a senior pre-sales engineer at SL and has a wide background in computing, going back many years, which he does not want to specify. Glenn worked for commercial companies as a user of products, as well as with many of the vendors that supply these products. This gives a great understanding of the challenges faced by both producers and consumers. On the webinar today, we will have Gopi Parimi, Senior Engineer. Gopi has a lot of TIBCO domain experience and will be available during our Q&A session. Today's presentation will be approximately 30 minutes with time left at the end to address questions from the audience. If you'd like to participate in this Q&A session, simply enter your question into the chat panel at any time during the event and click Submit. With that, I'll pass it over to you, Ted.
Great. Thanks, Gia. And I want to thank everyone for giving us 30 minutes today, and we'll try to make this as enjoyable and as interesting as we can. You know, we thought this concept of 10 tips in 30 minutes might be interesting to a lot of users, but we were surprised by how much interest there's actually been in this subject. You know, TIBCO BusinessWorks is obviously a very and very effective product, and for a lot of companies, it's strategic. For a reason, it's critical that it operates optimally all the time, and there, as we've learned, there can be challenges to that. We're going to focus on that. And before I started, I wanted to take just a moment to talk about our relationship with TIBCO. A lot of you may not know where we get into the picture here, but we actually go back a long way with TIBCO, and TIBCO is SL's largest reseller. We have experience working with more than, I believe it's about 130 or 140 TIBCO customers right now to implement monitoring. So we've got a pretty broad range of experience, and I think it will bring a unique perspective to some of these issues. Take a look at the specific challenges. You know, always easy, of course, to the BW environment. It can be very challenging for a few reasons. They tend to be very complex and tend to be also often very large implementations consisting of hundreds, if not thousands, of BW engines, ES servers, custom adapters, orchestration processes, large applications that are built around BW and the rest of the TIB stack. They include a lot of subsystems, so it can include infrastructure, of course, the hardware, the network, the operating system, the messaging, the orchestration itself, BW, and applications that they run on. So these environments, by their nature, are extremely complex and can be challenging to monitor. Large number of BW customers, we've seen a number of questions that keep coming up repeatedly, and I think that it's likely that you all on the call are struggling with many, if not all, of these as well. You know, you look at prioritization in a BW environment when you're monitoring and managing it. You know, how can you prioritize addressing issues around business impact, right? How to be proactive? How can you correct problems that are coming along before users are affected and really even aware of the problem? How can you reduce what is inherently a highly complex system and understand the interdependencies, even when your critical apps depend on both TIBCO and non-TIBCO components? And most of you are using BusinessWorks in a heterogeneous environment. So you understand how other parts of this infrastructure are impacting your BW environment. So we're going to provide some tips here and address some tips that we think will help answer a lot of these questions. Before I do that, though, I'm going to take just another moment, and I want to talk about RTView for just a minute, because we're going to be using RTView to explain how some of these tips work. We're going to really show you how the points we illustrated with RTView. And I want to explain how products work, because TIBCO is a reseller of RTView. They have 3 standalone monitors in addition to the standard monitor IE, but these essentially are the 3 monitors TIBCO sells. Now, S sells a product called RTView Enterprise Monitor. This is sold by Sell and not TIBCO, and this is what we're going to be showing some of the examples and illustrating some of the tips and points today that we're going to make. I'm not going to spend much time explaining Enterprise Monitor because you're not here to see that, but what Enterprise Monitor is an end-to-end monitoring platform. And it monitors a number of different technologies, including all of these TIBCO technologies that you see here in the middle. And it provides a layer of intelligence with correlation and centralized alerting that makes it easy to be able to pull performance metrics from all of these different environments into a singular end-to-end view. Monitors, these standalone monitors that TIBCO sells on the right, are essentially the same in functionality as the solution packages within Enterprise Monitor. So, standalone BW Monitor is essentially the same as the BW solution package in Enterprise Monitor. And that thing I wanted to just make really clear. And the last point I want to make is that anyone using these TIBCO standalone monitors can extend them to work within the RTView Enterprise Monitor platform. So this actually enables you to take your TIBCO monitoring to a new dimension. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Glenn, and let's go ahead and dive in.
Okay, thanks very much, Ted. So a couple of Ted raised the 4 questions that need to be addressed in order to efficiently manage. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, sorry about that. So Ted raised those 4 questions that I have to be able to show you using these 10 tips how you can address those questions, and we'll start with tip number 1. Avoid tunnel vision. So, managing our BW environment, we need to have the ability to look both upstream and downstream at events. These events impact us, and what happens within our environment affects other environments. Focus on our own area of responsibility. When there's issue, our first instinct is to ensure that everything in our domain is functioning normally and is not the cause of the problem. You can spend many hours troubleshooting issues in the BW environment only to find out that the symptom was actually caused by something external to BW. Complex systems are highly interdependent. For example, 90% of the processes in BW are created by or for EMS. To try to manage a BW environment in isolation and without visibility into any EMS activities doesn't really make much sense. And we need to remember that 100% of these processes rely on the compute layer. This can often be a hidden source of intermittent problems. You need to be able to understand the relationship between all these systems and more. And in order to do this, you really need to have visibility into these systems. So this screen is visibly possible through a modern monitoring system. On the screen, we see the health state of all of the middleware components responsible for the smooth running of the application. We see BW, EMS, plus a whole range of other things that can impact the performance of this application, and of course the end user satisfaction. What we want to is a point where we can actually detect these problems before they occur. If we can action quickly, we can solve these issues before the customer becomes even aware that they are going to exist. This that can promote avoidance program. Over time change, habits tend to not. We can tend to hang on to past practices, and it's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day routine and lose sight of many improvements and enhancements that are available through the vendor. You may, for example, find out you're dependent upon a very labor-intensive, high-maintenance scripting process when the process is already provided by the vendor. And believe it or not, do listen to their customers, and they do try to make their products more efficient, more automated, and more effective. You might environment you're working with was optimally aligned to meet requirements that no longer are appropriate. So you review that and make sure that you are in line with business requirements. Technology is always changing, so you need to make sure you're up to date on the latest and greatest of everything. You can reduce complexity and avoid confusing and expensive hardware upgrades by using some of these new techniques. So what I've done is just a few of the benefits of a health check program that you could schedule perhaps once a year, and the SL support team would be very happy to work with you on that. Identifying weak links. So by persistent failure events, you can improve your SLAs, you can improve your customer satisfaction, and this has, of course, improve your reputation. With a large dynamic environment, it's often difficult to detect these recurring points of failure, especially if the failures are intermittent. Oftentimes, you've tracked down to where that problem originated from. That problem is no longer existing, and so it's very, very difficult to prove cause and effect. This is using alert history. As we're gathering these alerts, if we're able to store and then later analyze these alerts, we look for patterns. Without this history, would be completely overlooked. So, for example, you're able to take many thousands of alerts, and by applying filters, reduce these down so that you're able to see just those failures that occurred on a specific subsystem, and analyze those and understand that the failures perhaps just happen to occur more often Monday morning at, say, 9 a.m. As deeper, you see that this is when the file system backup is occurring, and you can, by the CPU alerts, that this is a problem. This is absorbing CPU resources that are needed by the processes. So by moving that backup process to off-peak time, you've avoided the cause of many persistent failures. An example of how we do that: we take many thousands of alerts and we put them down by the filtering so that you can see that this one server with the CPU-related problem is actually impacting many different systems. And workload, let's not forget the hidden machines. Underneath all of these Java processes, we have a JVM that needs to be taken into account. Java in JVM, and it's often overlooked or it's simply not visible to teams. So you need a monitoring system that can provide the linkage between the JVM and the processes that are running on that JVM. Once you watch the JVM in association with the process, and start adjusting, increasing, decreasing the size of the JVM to optimize use of the resources on the machine, and so to avoid slowdowns at moments of high stress. Make that the JVM has got enough headroom to accommodate peak demand. Not just looking at an average. You need to see a trend line that will show you momentary peaks. Your change in allocation within or configuration of the JVM, great performance benefits, and also release some unneeded resources. For the JVMs, we also need to be able to monitor the garbage collection process, make sure that enough memory is being released after a garbage collection. This is factual information. These are the kind of screenshots you'll need if you then have to start working with the server ops staff. Is to prioritize support activities. This is unbelievably important. One of the things that your monitoring system must do is provide application-centric navigation through intelligent dashboards. Your resources are limited, and they're getting more and more limited each year. So how do you cope with the pressure? And when you're looking at multiple screens of alerts flashing by, your manager's phone starts ringing, your email box starts filling up, how do you then clear noise and start focusing on those hot applications that need immediate attention? The answer is through a monitoring system. A good monitoring system, in real time or close to, or it keeps track of all of the alerts being generated. But more than that, what it does is it filters and it analyzes those alerts and brings your attention. Those alerts affect the mission-critical systems. It means that your support team can jump on those and perhaps to one side those problems with, who knows, team hard activities until later on after the initial hot problems have been solved. It's a single failed transaction for a live customer. Cause process can represent 100% failure rate for that customer. Their perception of your systems is impacted by that failure. There is a screen, it's a different screen. So we see that at the background, the higher level dashboard. This is the result of analyzing thousands of different components, grouping those components together to the support team, application-centric view. There's a change in status. The icon representing that application goes to red. With clicks down, the sort of drill down through that, so the failing component, he can see the error message and he can take immediate corrective action. So tip number 6 is understanding dependencies. A main facing middleware and administrators and support staff is dealing with the sheer number of processes and connections that are just simply flying by all the time. What I'll do to decrease the confusion here is to plan ahead a little bit with development teams to enable ClientID processes. One between BW and EMS will have ClientID stored and it can then be retrieved and used to associate the process with the queues. Confusion, but it also means that you'll be able to see what and who are actually taking use of these connections. Your connections are left open after a process or application closes, then be applicated. They can be then removed, and that will help you clean up your system. Otherwise, you're looking at listings of generic information without being able to differentiate. The system needs to be able to make use of these relationships for intelligent alert generation. 7, organization is key. So you divide and conquer. As systems are changing, business demands, the static environment that you're used to becomes dynamic. The system, in turn, needs to be agile and extensible. So you need to organize your environment. Looking at 600 plus engines, it can be simply overwhelming, and you no longer keep in your head information on what the resources, where they exist, and what they're supporting. ones are the hot engines supporting hot applications, and which ones are just there for internal time card management systems. Structuring is key. What a system will allow you to do is visually segregate out those assets, to group those assets that make sense to the support staff, without in all the assets that are physically employed in your environment. You should create screens that are profile-driven, so represented either by region, by business sector, by function, by support staff. You need to slice and dice that and present that. Your monitoring system needs to be able to accommodate those needs. Working towards is to avoid unnecessary upgrades. Oftentimes when systems get stressed, performance degrades, customer satisfaction starts dropping, the immediate thing to do is to want to go out there and upgrade, buy more hardware, for example. But sometimes this just creates a lot of confusion. It doesn't result in the improvements that you need. You can avoid a lot of this cost and confusion causing unnecessary upgrades by keeping track of what resources are being used and where they're being used. For example, in a loaded environment, how are you that the clustering and the load balancing algorithms are working effectively? How are you that the traffic is being directed appropriately? So the system should be able to show you time the data placed on these different resources on the same screen. This is data that the algorithms are being effective. Other way is that traffic increases, the proportion of systems is not the same, and that the color schemes you're looking at, which should be a uniform color, are actually on hotspots. An indication of a problem. A well-balanced cluster, unlike this, should show a very even coloration, with no square appearing darker or lighter than the other. The same system should also be able to show you historically the data placed on your subsystems, so that you view over time what demands are. You may that you have many systems that are stressed, but there's also a lot of systems that are underutilized. Either move applications or move resources so that you balance out, not just within the cluster, but a segment of the infrastructure, so the load is more evenly distributed. Last, when you've got factual information like this, when you have screenshots like this and charts, you do have to go to management asking for more resources. You'll now have a source of factual information over time. This is than having to go in there with an anecdotal more servers, and I'm sure that this would help. Right? So we want to be able to do is go in there and prove our case. Tip number, monitor the monitor. We're talking about efficiencies. We've been talking about making sure that the solution is appropriate to the need. So now it's time to start looking at the monitor. Monitor that has a light footprint is essential. It can be hugely embarrassing. Explain that some of the performance issues were caused by the very monitoring system you put in place to avoid issues. Now allow for the alert rules, as an example, to be centralized to one server as being replicated and executed on hundreds of servers. As all these rules are being replicated and executed, it leads to high maintenance costs. Is onerous and often gets overlooked. And the result of that is many of these rules are being executed, they're already obsolete or redundant. So by consolidating all of these rules into one central place means that you only have to manage one set of rules. Executing these rules also represents a load on the host. So moving that away from the host, you know the performance of that host, and you're able to much more manage this within the monitoring system itself. Consider when you're looking at a monitoring system is scalability. As you grow, and apps that get more and more distributed, scalability will become a big issue. System that allows for the metrics collection and processing to happen close to the source, but not actually on the source. If you're able to do this, latency as network traffic, the system will still have the deltas or the summary information it needs to manage the presentation layer. Optimal, and you can see from the screen an example of how RTView is implemented. The collection or the metric collection is removed from the host system, but it is host system than it is to the central point. Because the deltas, only the summary information sent to the central point. Optimal design takes large environments that are continually growing and perhaps becoming distributed either geographically or through multiple data centers. And then something else you absolutely have to remember is that your technology set is not static. Next year you're going to be supporting different technologies you're not currently supporting with your monitoring system. So you need to make sure the monitoring system you choose, you need to make that flexible, that can adapt to new technologies, that they can be brought into that picture, so you can still see at a glance all of the issues going on within your environment. All of the dimensions at a glance. When somebody's talking about an at a glance view, they need to include the time element, not just a drill down, but also need to factor in the time element. The questions that Ted raised in his presentation, we talk about prioritization and focus. We're being proactive. We're talking about reducing complexity. We're talking about being able to accommodate a heterogeneous environment. You'll see that the answers to those questions are addressed through this single screen. Going on here is we're showing you a view at a glance, the different layers of technology that together includes running operation of either an application or a service. The performance availability of each of these separate layers is represented on the same time scale. As a time-synced holistic view of the infrastructural segment of an application. And this is absolutely essential to understanding the cause and effect, and I'll walk through the example in a moment. This is that support teams made from the user team, the networking team, the application team, the middleware team, can all be looking at the same screen, looking at the same information. And we found that this greatly improves communication. By adding a common interface, it encourages a collaborative approach to problem solving. It means that instead of moving from a war room of 14 or 15 people, it stretches on for many hours. 3 or 4 people that are involved with the technology that seems to be having a problem and resolve the issue. Through what you're seeing on this screen. The day starts off at 8 o'clock. The messages start to increase on a queue. That's expected. The BW CPU increases, and that's fine too. Message rate to go up. That's exactly as designed, and everything seems to be okay. By 5 o'clock, well, somehow a rogue process is introduced. This rogue process is pulling down some of the CPU, and as a consequence, the BW processes are starved. It's no longer able to keep up with the messages. and the ping message rate starts to increase, as you can see just here, until an alert is generated. What happens clock when this is rated is the time the support team started to focus on this, the rogue process is stopped. Anymore. The whole system will return to normal as the ping messages are absorbed. But what I want to have you think about is a screen like this, without that ability to tie these different layers together, in synced view. How will it take a team of people from different disciplines to understand where the problem was, if ever? How much would it cost, and what would be the impact on user satisfaction? So I believe there's no way that this result can be achieved efficiently. It's a separate, disparate monitoring systems. You have a single view, create a single monitoring system. That you've seen some benefit out of these tips. I'm hoping that you can keep in mind the questions that Ted raised. And I'm also hoping that if there are any questions, if there's anything you want to drill into a little bit more deeply, contact somebody at SAL, and we'll be very happy to work with you on your environment, using WebEx, using whatever system we can. So, Tina?
Okay, thanks, Glenn. I want to go ahead in a few minutes and answer any questions that the group may have. And I see that we have some questions coming in right now. Glenn, the first question is, does it rely on Hawk to provide the BW and EMS performance metrics?
Yeah, for the most part, we'll use Hawk for BW, not for EMS though. As we talk about the range of technologies we work with, we have different ways to collect that metric from different sources. So Hawk is one of them.
Okay, great. This question: what is your plan for monitoring BW6? I can actually address that. So we are actively in development on a BW6 monitoring capability that will be date at the end of next month. So our plan is for the next version of BW Monitor to include the ability to monitor not only BW5 but BW6 as well from the same monitor. Question: does SLBW use the get activities method, and how does it represent this data graphically? Glenn or maybe Gopi, would you like to take that?
Chair, this is Gopi. Can you repeat the question again?
Yes. SLBW use the get activities method, and how it represents this data graphically?
Multiple ways of, yes, we do get all the activities using get activities method, microagent method. But then representation of these activities, each activity has different metrics. So the activity itself is represented as a box on a heat map. So if your process has 10 different activities, you will see 10 different boxes on your screen. But then once you drill down, you see different, more granular metrics of each activity. You see different trends, execution rates of that activity, error rates on that activity, everything on graphical trends. So there are multiple ways of seeing, multiple ways of graphical representation of each activity.
Okay, great. Thank you. How are you to show these application dependencies? Is there a dependency map included or integrated? Glenn, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So the way that this comes about is we have many different techniques of creating a service model. an existing CMDB. We can create our own based on information that we glean from traffic on the system. But the net result is always to take lower level metrics and map that automatically to the business application, from then on up to the business service.
Okay, thank you. Looks like this may be our last question unless another one comes in here shortly. Are you planning one of these webinars to address business events product? And the answer is yes. We've got a series of TIBCO-focused webinars that we're going to be doing and continuing to do, and I'll go ahead and show you that in just a moment as my next slide. Then other question that just came in, old historical data can you store? Take that. So the way that we work is that for presentation of and creation of alerts and these real-time dashboards, etc., we're functioning in memory. So we're using in-memory caches. But then we configure the amount of time after the event, we're writing it out to a physical disk. So your question, the persistence policy really is up to you. We can in history for as long as you want. What we're able to do is to treat that historical data. Time moves by as you get further and further away from the event, the amount of data that we retain gets smaller and smaller. So very happy to talk to you about at more length. Another one just came in as well. Does RTView pull the number of requests, response times of the service in any other way from TIBCO, Active Matrix, BWSE services? That's something, Glenn, you're comfortable with, or would you like to?
I think he's the AMX expert, so I'll let him address that one.
Yeah, yeah, we do get such response times, the overall cycle time of each request for BWSE. As for BW, I mean, if you're trying to get response times of any web service deployed inside classic BW, then currently monitoring each process, I mean, looking at that specific web service process is the only way we can get response times. But for AMX BWSC, yes, we do get the response times, request hits, and errors, hits, and all that for service-specific metrics. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's see. Question. Glenn, for BW Hawk is used, do we know what is used for monitoring EMS, and does it use SSL or TCP connection?
Both types of connection, and we work with the administrator interface, poll the EMS systems. I think at this point they would actually deploy agents, so we're not introducing any overhead on the host system. So we work through interrogating either an API or using administrative interfaces.
Okay, great. Thank you. So it's like that's it for questions. There's two other things. One thing very important I wanted to throw out. That is that if anybody attending this webinar has any tips that they think should have made this top 10 list and were covered, I want to ask you if you would email us and let us know what that is. For any good tips, Gia will send you an SL Bluetooth speaker. We'd like to be able to make it available to anybody. So any tips that you have that should be added to this list would be great. We're going to be coming up with a new application note. It'll be a tech note on the topic and sending that out to everyone that's interested, and we'd like to make that as comprehensive as we can. Okay, it works really well. Last thing I just wanted to point out going forward, we have a series of webinars that continues to happen. The next one in this series is going to be extending the standalone TIBCO monitoring to provide end-to-end visibility. So it's going to be something that's a little bit more product focused than today was. It's going to be focused more in depth on really what's this higher level of visibility, end-to-end visibility, and the correlation and the key metrics capability that we just showed you. So that may be of interest to people, and we'll send you an email on that. We have a TIBCO BE and Active Spaces monitoring webinar planned for late April, and really the focus we see there is that so many of the active spaces and implementations are using business events, and of course, so there are some challenges to monitoring that in a holistic way. So I think there's some good things that we can cover there. And then lastly, there is another webinar of what we did today for EMS that we'll be doing in May. It'll be 10 EMS monitoring tips in 30 minutes. So that covers it for today, and we very much appreciate everybody's time. Hope it was useful for you, and thank you for your time.
Ted, I'd just like to add that to remind everybody, this webcast has been recorded, and I will be emailing the link in the next few days. It will also be posted on our website at www.sl.com in our events section. Thank you.